Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Star Citizen with Down to Earth Astronomy. I have recently been reading up on mining, and doing my research I came across the mention of caves. I thought that sounds like something that could be quite fun to explore, and today I'm going to tell you the story of my first adventure into an underground cave system in Star Citizen. The D2 merch store is open. There are t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, mugs and tote bags with many cool designs. Head down to the link in the video description and get yourself your merchandise today. Before I set out on my exploration trip, I thought it was a good idea to stock up on some proper equipment. My current spacesuit was probably fine, but I wanted something more suited for the task. I was heading to Lowell and was running around the city, got lost a few times, but eventually came across a promising looking store. I began stocking up on relevant equipment, and after that I headed out to Port Olisar. After making a perfect landing at Port Olisar, I headed inside and continued shopping for the last few items. I stocked up on food and water and anything else I came across that I thought could be handy on a cave exploration mission. After all the shopping was done, I looked a lot better equipped for the task, and I was ready to head out. I looked around on the mission board and saw a mission for a missing person. A Mr. Thompson has apparently gone missing, and his family has put out a reward for anyone who is able to locate his whereabouts. Last I've heard from him, he was heading out to a cave system on one of the local moons, so I recalled my ship, headed out towards his last known location. After a bit of flying, I arrived at the cave entrance. I headed on inside and was pleasantly surprised to see that at least the cave entrance was well lit. There were lamps everywhere, and I was very careful as I moved down the cave not to jump down any steep ledges I couldn't get back up. Look very careful for side tunnels that could confuse me on the way back. Very careful making myself a mental map as I was diving deeper and deeper into the cave. Eventually the lights that was at the entrance of the cave, they slip up and it became a lot more dark in there, so with the light from my helmet I made my way further and further into the cave. And eventually I came across what I had feared and found an intersection. I looked around carefully. There was some bottles standing around that I could use as reference, and I used the location of my ship to indicate which way I had to use to get out again. I made a mental map of this little intersection and I headed on deeper into the cave. As I was exploring deeper into the cave, I came across a small ledge. I didn't think much of it at first. I thought the gravity on this moon is relatively low, it should be easy enough to jump up there. I jumped and slipped, missed my footing, and apparently I wasn't getting too used to the new equipment yet, and I managed to get my foot stuck in an opening in the small ledge. No matter what I tried to wrist and wiggle myself out, it was no good. I just couldn't get my foot out, it was just stuck. It was the first time I got that feeling that I might not actually get out of this alive. I was afraid of ripping my spacesuit and losing pressure, and it was at this point I realized I brought a hand miner. It would be a risky move, but I figured if I could cut some of the rocks loose around my ankle, I might be able to get out. I pulled out the hand miner, and luckily as I did so, my foot slipped out of the crack in the rock and I was free again. Again, I was reminded that this was no easy trip and that I could very well end up as Mr. Thompson, and was kind of cursing myself that I didn't tell anyone back at Port Olisar where I was heading. Luckily my ankle was unhurt and I decided to press on further into the cave, which involved some crawling down on all four through some very, very narrow tunnels, and eventually I got into a larger room. Once again, I used some of the natural rock formation as waypoints or landmarks that I could use to find my way back. As I explored further, I came across a small base camp. The power was still on and it gave me a small glimpse of hope that Mr. Thompson might have survived down here after all, that he just, for some reason, maybe he lost his way, couldn't find his way out and has been stumbling around in the cave. I don't know. He might still be here somewhere. The fact that the power was still on gave me a glimpse of hope that maybe I'm going to find this guy alive. I kept exploring. I found more base camps. I found some stunning views inside the cave. But after exploring every corner of the cave that I could possibly find, there was just no sign of him. No body. He wasn't there. I just could not find him. I was beginning to get quite thirsty and hungry after spending so much time in the cave, and I wasn't really able to drink anything while inside the cave because of my helmet. So I decided I better head back to the ship. Luckily, the trip out of the cave was relatively easy, just going from one landmark to the next. On the way out, I did feel quite disappointed that I was unable to locate Mr. Thompson, and when I made it back to the ship, I got a bit of food, a little bit to drink, and got a rest after the long exploration trip. When I woke up again, I decided, well, while I'm here, I might as well bring back a little bit of credits just so that the trip wasn't completely in vain. I brought the hand miner that I talked about earlier, so I decided to head back on inside. Now that I knew the layout of the cave, it was a lot easier to navigate, and I began looking around for valuable materials I could mine. I did manage to find a few ores of some valuable material, which I mined and picked up the fragments. As I was looking around the edge of one of the larger rooms, I came across a small opening like 3 meters up the wall that I didn't notice on my first trip down here. I decided to crawl up, and this led me into a labyrinth of very small, narrow tunnels, and it was really difficult to keep a sense of direction and to navigate them, with multiple times where you had to then crawl down a ledge and then go under something and up a ledge somewhere else, and multiple forks. It was very difficult to navigate. I could barely stand up in the narrow caves, and I was relieved when it finally opened up to yet another large room. This room had a lot of smaller side rooms that I began to explore, many of them with even more base camps, so it seems like Mr. Thompson had at least made it this far into the cave. After exploring one of the side rooms, I wanted to make it back to the main room, but no matter what I did, there was just no exit. I couldn't find it. I was running around the room for what felt like an eternity, and the exit was just nowhere to be found. It was at this point that panic really began to set in. At this point, I was pretty sure I'm not gonna make it out alive, and my rapidly depleting oxygen supply became very, very apparent to me. I cursed myself for being so greedy and heading back into the cave. I wish I'd just left after the first trip, stopped while I was still on top. But it was at this point that I remembered an old saying: can't people live, 10 people die. So I took a deep breath, and I took a very slow walk around the edge of the room, carefully examining every inch of the wall, and eventually I did find the exit back out to the main room. With my oxygen supply slowly running out, I decided just to quickly explore the last side room that I haven't discovered yet, and if I didn't find anything there, I would head back towards the surface again. Upon heading into the side room, I was jumping over a small ledge and misjudged the jump and didn't really make the other side, and I slid down into the small opening. And it was at this point that I saw it. A lifeless body lying in a pile of rock. I took a minute to scan the body to confirm what I feared. I had indeed found Mr. Thompson. With the limited oxygen supply I had left, I knew I would not be able to carry his body out of here, so I made a note of his final resting place. The trip back to the surface seems to take an eternity, knowing that I was too late to help Mr. Thompson. I find comfort in knowing that he was most likely dead way before I left Port Olisar, and there was nothing I could have done. But I didn't look forward to bringing the sad news to his family. But eventually I did make it back to the surface. It took some time to admire the view before heading into the ship, getting a little bit more food and water, and getting a well-earned rest before heading back to the port to deliver the sad news. I hope you liked this little more storytelling kind of videos. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below, or leave a like on the video. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in space.